So in that case, the question comes then, what is freedom? And if we are free, can we choose how we want to be free? And with that, the contemplation starts. What is freedom? And when I contemplate something, I think the first thing I look at into the root of the word free. And when I go into the root of the word free, I found that it's coming from an old English word means called frio, which means not in bondage. Means in the current connotations of time, not in bondage, it can have so many different meanings. But we were living in the time when people were in bondage, when people were being put in a bondage for some people to gain their personal freedom. And I think no discussion of freedom should start without honoring those people, the honoring the people who has lived in slavery, who has lived in colonial world, and who has lived in suppression. So if we start with slavery, how would a slave feel when they have been chained and hung at a street market to be bought and sold by some people? There's a beautiful poem by Doris Daniels called Roadway to Freedom, in which she really put the hopes and agonies of a person who have been thrown there to be treated as a domestic animal. She said, out of chains, I want to run away to be free. To freedom, I want to ride. Under the cover of sky, under the cover of night, I will hide. Meanwhile, on the other parts of the world, not only the lands of the people were colonized, but also their minds and thoughts. Nobel Prize winning poet Rabindranath Tagore, who was living in the colonial times, beautifully summarized this as a calling to be free. He said, to be free from being a puppet, to be free from the insult of dwelling as a puppet, where we just wait in obedience and patience for master of the show to steer us in the mimicry of life. And it's not only colonialism or slavery where the freedom was being called. Even the so-called free men in the 1700s Europe were oppressed, and that led to this French Revolution of 1789. The Enlightenment showed them the beauties of freedom. What is freedom? Show them what are the inequalities they were going through. And that's where they cried for liberty, equality, fraternity. However, we call ourselves living in this world where we have all the freedom which we want to be. And then the question arises, are we free? Most of us choose a profession which we want to go from the university, and we choose the university on the basis that how we can get a very well paid job. And when we are in that very well paid job, we dwell a significant amount of time, sometimes very meaningless jobs, to go through a societal or external validation, so that if we go to a party or if we go to a collective circle, we can say with pride, what do we do? And if that's not enough, we got completely grilled and sucked into that societal expectation or the pressure, and then recruit the next generation to come into that and create a new circle again. In this circle, are we free? And going beyond the societal expectations, if you move towards the mental part, we really take time to not take time in processing our thoughts, in resolving our emotions, and put that somewhere in the deep, dark corner of a closet. And when they knock to come out, we even tighten the door. And they do come out. They do come out at the most unexpected time, in most inappropriate manner. And then we have to deal with it. We have to deal with the churnings, as Justice Springfield said, the windmills of our mind. Round like a circle in a spiral, like a wheel inside a wheel, like the circles that we find in the windmills of our mind. Then the question arises, we have so many different physical, we have so many different forms of bondages we have been in: physical, societal, mental. Then what is being free? Then I again go back into the root of the freedom, before where it's coming from the Old English word frio. And the root took me to a place in Norse and the Gothic culture. There's a Norse word called frijo and the Gothic word called frijon, from which the Old English word frio came. And both of these words means to love oneself, to love oneself, to go beyond the societal expectations and to find meaning in our own longingness. Freedom is not about something we are getting free from, but the freedom should be about what we are getting free towards. And if you ask philosophers how we can find a freedom, or how can find a way where we can go towards the freedom, the answer is always one. In fact, for every other question, the answer is always one: reason, the rational intellect. In this case, it's all about the choices what we make. Aristotle called it deliberation of choices, and the choices which are coming not from our desires or our habits, but from a rational looking into the situation. And not only rational looking at the outside, but rational looking inside. What are our virtues? What do we want? And he said the aim of everything, what we are looking for, is eudaimonia, which in Greek can be translated into happiness, or some people translate it as fulfillment. But then the question arises, is getting rich or famous, is it a fulfillment? Aristotle will say it could be if that is the end in itself, but not the means. If we want to get wealth to find the inner peace, then it's not the eudaimonia or the fulfillment. Then peace is a eudaimonia of fulfillment. And then what we should matter to us is the last step, which is end in itself. And this is something which is the striving for. This path is long and tiring. And we say the first gatekeeper in this path is our own habits. because going away from the habits needs to have a very stronger purpose why we are going to do that. Otherwise, that's the purpose of the habits to keep on repeating what we are doing. And the habits come from either the expectations or our desires. The question arises how we can go beyond the desires to move to a level where we can find our own freedom. For me, freedom is a sum total of the conscious choices that we make. As Kant also said, that an action is only free when it has been made consciously based on the rational principle, not on desires or habits. But this is a very Western way of looking into the thing, also pure rationality. If you go to the eastern part of the world, in Bhagavad Gita, which is a 400 BCE text, it's written, Karmanye Vadikaraste ma phaleshu kadachana, which translates into keep on doing the work, but do not ask for the fruits or do not desire the fruits of the work. In short, they're asking for renunciation, but not of action, but renunciation of the desires of the action. It is a metaphysical text, but then what is happening behind that? Why somebody will do an action if there's no desire for the results of the action? The desire makes us do the reaction. But that's exactly the point, that we act not for its desire, for the fruits, but we act because it's the right thing to act. And there come the concept of guided intuition. That if we are acting on the collective principle of doing good, then we will be guided on our path. And through that guidance, we might get something what we want to attain. But then the question is, how do we connect to that guided principle? And that the thing go back to the Western culture, because Aristotle called the same thing as nous, as intuition. And the intuition, and that is this entire, we talked about philosophy of freedom by Steiner. He also talked about intuition, or he called it a spiritual intuition. This is a path where we just connect to something more than what we can know about. Some people are much better in it than other. However, the freedom could be found through various paths. We can go to a path of a pure rational intelligence, or we can be guided by the intuition or nous. The results would be same, or could be same. It depends upon the person, the musicians, the artists, the poets. That's the intuition is a path for them. The rationalist, the scientist, reason is a path for them. But the most important thing is to be on that path, is to go towards where is the freedom, what freedom we want to go towards, rather than what we are freeing from. Just to summarize this, there's a great poem. It's a Nobel Prize winning poem, again by Rabindranath Tagore. Actually, me and Alicia was really into Rabindranath Tagore last week, because it was his also we realized was also his birth centenary, and he was the first Asian person to receive a Nobel Prize ever, and he has a distinction of writing the uh, national national song for three countries. He's the only person who has done that: India, Bangladesh, and Sri Lanka. And he wrote a wonderful poem called "Where the Mind is Without Fear" from Gitanjali. Where the mind is without fear, where the head is held high, where knowledge is free, where the world is not broken down into the fragments of a narrow domestic walls, where words come from the depths of truth, where tireless striving stretches its arm towards perfection, where clear stream of reason has not lost its way in a dreary desert sand of dead habit. In this heaven of freedom, my father, let the world awake. So this is what I have to say about freedom, and I'm very, very excited to know your opinions, your thoughts, and agreements, disagreements, and we just go for another half an hour. I stop the recording now.